At page 10, we're looking to redefine foreigner to mean a person who, for purposes of this act, foreigner for purposes of this act, to mean a person who engages, undertakes, supervises, controls, or subsidizes the activities specified in clause 2.2, in section 2.2, and include, for the inclusion we are deleting a Ugandan citizen residing outside Uganda, and we're also deleting the discretion of the minister to designate someone as a foreigner. The important thing here is that for a person to be called a foreigner for purposes of this act, that person must do the things that are prohibited in clause 2.2. So if, for example, a person is a foreigner here but has not done any such thing, he is not a foreigner for purposes of this act. Foreign policy, to clarify on foreign policy, which was originally set out in clause 10, now we are putting a definition here to say means a policy developed by a foreigner and has not been adopted by the government of Uganda. So government policy is also defined here to mean a statement, decision, or actions of government on how a sector is regulated or governed, issued in accordance with the Constitution and the laws of Uganda. So interest of a foreigner means interests of a foreigner that are not aligned with the policies and laws developed by the government. Pardon?
And adopted by the government.
Developed and adopted by the government. Interest of Uganda is at page 11, means the national interest of Uganda based on the principles of national interest and common good enshrined in the national objectives and directive principles of state policy as provided for in the Constitution, the laws of Uganda, and government policy. We are proposing to delete the use of a person, the natural person, all through the bill. Where the bill had a person, we want to replace that with the agent of the foreigner, so that we are clear that the person we are talking about in respect to this law is only that one who is defined under the agent of the foreigner. Political activity, we are defining political activities to mean any activities aimed at influencing the enactment of law, formulation of policy, or decision-making of government, or for the people, or of the people of Uganda, and includes fundraising, sponsoring, fostering, nominating, supporting, or campaigning for a candidate in an election, registering, funding, and campaigning for a political party in an election, fundraising, campaigning, canvassing for support or opposing a political party or candidate in an election, any activities aimed at influencing the outcome of an election, any activities aimed at influencing the will and consent of the people of Uganda to determine who shall govern them and how they shall be governed, and any activities aimed at influencing, imposing, or normalizing ideologies which are inconsistent with the Constitution or which are inconsistent with the culture, customs, and norm of any communities listed in the third schedule of the Constitution. Honorable colleagues and members, just maybe to give, like, for example, by way of example, if, for example, a Ugandan did not agree that we should have the crude oil pipeline, a Ugandan, you and me, did not think that it was necessary because of maybe green environmental concerns, we did not want to have our oil extracted. You and I should be at liberty to promote that policy that we should not have oil extracted. But when I receive money from a foreigner to promote that agenda, that is where the problem starts. So a Ugandan is at liberty to challenge and question any policy. But once the person is doing that to promote, is sponsored to do that, that's where the problem is. So that's where we are here. So in clause 2, this act only applies, we were saying the act applies to any person who acts as an agent of a foreigner. So we are rewording it to mean it's the same thing. It says this act applies to an agent of a foreigner. So to remove any avoidance, to take away any doubt that any person may mean another third party, we are saying it relates to an agent of a foreigner. In clause 2.2, we are saying for avoidance of doubt, this act applies to an agent of a foreigner who engages in any of the following activities through any means, including the use of digital platforms. For example, engages in political activities in Uganda to further the interest of a foreigner. Solicits, collects, disburses or dispenses contributions, loans, money, or any other thing of value for purposes of financing or sponsoring political activities for further the interest of a foreigner. For example, if I'm Attorney General and I receive money from a foreigner to move a motion of any nature, that's prohibited activity. Represents the interest of a foreigner before an agency or an agency or official of government for purposes of engaging in political activities. Recruits, contracts, engages, enters into partnership or sponsors any person in Uganda to promote the interests of a foreigner for purposes of engaging in political activities. So those are the changes we are making there. In clause 4.4, we want to make some clarification. And we are saying, for avoidance of doubt and notwithstanding the provisions of this section, this act shall not apply to monies or funding received from a foreigner by a supervised institution or any other institution regulated by a regulatory body under an act of parliament for the purposes of meeting its regulatory requirements or for purposes of undertaking its commercial license or permitted activity under an act of parliament. For example, a bank, it is regulated, it is licensed to do lending. So if it receives money from a foreigner, it is not for those activities that are set out in 2.2. It is for lending. So, but we are saying for avoidance of doubt, because we've heard what their concerns are, so we are saying for avoidance of doubt, let's clarify what this means. By a health or medical facility for purposes of performing an activity permitted under the laws of Uganda to be undertaken by the health or medical facility. C, an academic or research institution for purposes of funding research and innovation or any other educational activity permitted under the laws of Uganda to be undertaken by an academic or research institution. D, a person for commercial, domestic, or family use. And E, faith-based organizations for activities that are connected with the mission of their faith-based organization. So we are saying that notwithstanding, nothing in this act shall be construed as prohibiting or requiring compliance with this act for lawful foreign direct investment, portfolio investment, diaspora remittances, export proceeds, trade finance, commercial loans, humanitarian assistance, technical assistance, grants, concession of financing, development assistance, or any other lawful foreign exchange inflow and such related activities. No, I think this just delete that. And such related activities. So we are saying, for avoidance of doubt, if there was anything unclear, we have tried to list out the things as much as possible that are not. But like I said when I was here the last time, the most important thing for members of parliament of this committee to look at is the application of the law. The law applies to only those activities which we have set out in the clause 2.2. At page 15,
we beg your pardon so that we can take
as what it should read. Nothing in this act shall be construed as prohibiting or requiring compliance with this act for lawful foreign direct investment, portfolio investment, diaspora remittances, export proceeds, trade finance, commercial loans, humanitarian assistance, technical assistance, grants, concession of financing, development assistance, or any other lawful foreign exchange inflow and related activities. unrelated acts. Thank you. At page, we are making a correction at page 15H to add perform. It was reading, the department shall any other function as the minister may assign to the department. So we are adding perform. Then at clause 5, at page 16, clause 5.4, we are amending it to read, it read originally a person who promotes. So we are amending it to read, an agent of a foreigner who intentionally promotes the interest of a foreigner against the interest of Uganda commits an offense and is liable. 13, we are proposing that should read, an agent of a foreigner who publishes false information or participates in any act or activity that weakens, undermines, or damages the economic viability of the country, knowingly with the intention of causing economic disruption, insecurity, instability, commits an offense of economic sabotage and is liable on conviction to that. So here we are introducing intention, mens rea, and purpose. Again, this person does this purposefully, wanting to weaken